Gennady Golovkin, a lot has been made about his age going into this fight, his inactivity, not the fighter that he used to be is generally the call. Barry, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, understandably, he's 40, 41, 40. So, you know, I think that's just life, isn't it? And he's been inactive, and that doesn't help you as you get older. I thought he was okay against Murata. Murata's a big, strong guy, powerful, hard to hurt. But he's not a top tier guy who we think when we mention him, we don't think along the lines of a Canelo. So you think because he's not as good, then you should just blast him out. But I don't think that's the case. He looked ring rusty. He looked vulnerable.
Yeah,
Golovkin. But that could be a lot to do with ring rust, or the age. Like I said, we don't quite see the shot. I don't think he was ever seriously hurt. Like I don't think see that. I think he was knocked off balance a few times. He looked like he was struggling for pace. But then when I think back about Golovkin fights, facially he always looks tired. Actually, the way he fights, he's always one of those. Like he always takes a deep breath before he attacks. Always has a big gulp before he does
off, big gulp.
Yeah,
the gloves up. And
so you always think, oh look at no. And I think them because he was getting knocked back onto his heels a little bit in the early rounds, and doing that gulp to come back, that he looked like, oh, hang on a minute, is he struggling a bit here? I don't think he did struggle that much. I think we built up a bigger narrative than it actually was. But he didn't look the vintage Golovkin. That's the truth. And I don't think we're ever going to see that again because just age and inactivity alone.
That's also one of the first times that I can remember where we've seen somebody come out and try and stick it on Gennady Golovkin from the opening bell.
Yeah.
Murata came out, he let his hands go, and we've seen Golovkin sort of get behind the jab. The Lemieux fight is a good example of that, him kind of taming an aggressive fighter, but being knocked onto his...
We got on the jab.
Yeah, particularly down the stretch in that fight, which won him the fight. Well, in some people's eyes, won him the fight. But yeah, it's the first time I remember him being backed up as opposed to electing to get behind the jab, which to me, and the vulnerability side of things, he did look more fragile in that fight. We've seen him hurt to the body against Sergey Derevianchenko, who's a good fighter, but he's always lost when he stepped up against the top boys at 160 pounds. And I just feel like Father Time comes for everybody, and I feel like it's come for Gennady Golovkin. Andy, your thoughts?
I mean, it can do, can't it? And sometimes you don't really know when it's going to catch up with you exactly. I think as you get older, from speaking to fighters who have been in that situation where you're maybe marking time a little bit, and I do think that his recent fights, Golovkin, I think there's been this kind of almost scowling indifference about his opponents because they're not Canelo. Yeah. And that's really the only fight that he's interested in. I'm not saying he's taken his eye off the ball, but I think there's maybe been a little bit of a lack of respect there for them, which can translate into what can look like sometimes not a great performance. You think they don't look as tight as they should. They give away a bit more than they should, maybe look a bit more vulnerable than they should, because he's looking at them and just thinking, I don't want to be in here with you. I've got to get you out of the way. But that's what it is. It's getting them out of the way so that he can get this fight that he's been after, this third fight for such a long time. And his marking time fights have been world title fights. But from speaking to other guys, sometimes you just don't know if it's still there. You really hope it is still there to have a really, really hard fight. But until you need to kind of reach down and go to the well, you just don't know. And one day it'll be the case that it's not. And you just can't quite let your hands go the way they used to. And like Barry said, you can't quite see the punches coming the way they used to and set yourself the way that you need to. And we've all seen it, haven't we? We've all seen it being that one appearance too many.
If you can't dig deep in for this fight,
then it's gone.
He's in trouble.
Yeah.
He's in big trouble.
When's your prime Gennady Golovkin? When did we see the best version of Gennady Golovkin?
It would.
I think it's around about that first fight.
I would say I was going to say those first two fights. I think they were both so brilliant. I thought Golovkin won them both, by the way. I didn't argue with the second one because I thought he won, but it was close. The first one I thought he won. So maybe, I would say that was probably his peak.
I mean, before that, it's kind of hard to gauge because people just didn't really want to fight him, did they? Like, so I'll always give Matt a lot of credit for taking the fight, and he was. At that point, he was just steamrolling through people. And people will look back at that spell of his career and just say, yeah, but, these weren't, with all due... I hope Macklin doesn't watch this. they'll look at the record and just say, well, you know, he wasn't fighting the absolute top guys, but it wasn't because he didn't want to. He just couldn't get those fights.
Martinez in there. He couldn't get
those fights.
There's Martinez, Cotto. There's the famous Cotto interviewer afterwards. He said, "Will you fight Gennady Golovkin next?" And he goes, "Ah!" And this is Miguel Cotto, who's fought pretty much everybody. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That kind of Gregor's Proxer era, the Martin Murray version of him, also I think is a very good version for me. And admittedly, he is limited, but the performance against David Lemieux, I thought was very, very good. Yeah. Merciless behind the jab. Just busted him up with the jab. Didn't really have to do anything else throughout that fight. And Lemieux was a one-dimension fight.
Stylistically, it was a fight that he was always going to look good in. But still, was he still world champion at the time, Lemieux?
Lemieux was an IBF title.
Yeah. And he did, and there was just the way he just walked through people. And again, he makes you, like you've already mentioned this, he makes you, like Canelo does it now, but they make you work hard and you want to work. So, like you see, Canelo's sort of nicked his mantle, his recipe, I should say. Like, he don't do anything, and even like fights so close, you're busting a gut just like to maybe just lose a round, but you've had to just put your foot in the pedal 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, and you just get this feeling, don't you, where somebody might be like with Saunders. You know, a few people gave him some rounds before he got stopped. I think I probably only gave him one, maybe two, but people look at it and you know, you've got one fighter who might just be nicking the odd battle, but they are definitely not winning.
You don't see him winning the fight.
They are having to box completely out of their skin just to stay in the fight. Really, sort of Usyk Bellew type situation.
Yeah, same thing.
Canelo changed, like nicked a bit from Golovkin. Like the second fight, okay, that was why I was so impressed with Canelo. The second fight, he learned from the first and realised, I got to push this fella back.
Yeah.
I got to be the one pushing him back. And you think, who would try and push Golovkin back?
And I think that shows just how good both of them are. You always speak about the fact that the great fighters, they change in the fight, or they change from fight to fight. In the second fight, you had Canelo holding the middle of the ring, and Gennady Golovkin went, okay, I get behind the jab.
Yeah.
And then in the second half of the fight in particular, he was, in a lot of people's eyes, mine included, he was winning those rounds behind the jab, whereas obviously people kind of assume Gennady Golovkin, this front foot destroyer.
The thing about
changing in the fight.
The thing about Golovkin, that jab, whether he's moving forward or moving back,
it's
that
a
jab,
ramrod jab. It's a right hand.
Yeah, it's the biggest right hand than any other boxers. Yeah. Arsenal.
It's amazing to look at someone like him and just. I know we've got all sorts of different weight divisions, but when you see a real big puncher, and they've just got that kind of suppleness about them, where they're not ripped to an absolute shred normally. I wouldn't say massive punchers. They've got that kind of elasticity about them.
Perfect technique.
And perfect technique, and it just looks so. That's the beautiful thing about
never
it.
Loading
it looks
up.
So effortless.
Like a Beterbiev. You never see Beterbiev winding up. It's all short and compact.
But not even just
straight at the target.
Just slinging punches in, aren't they? It's just so easy for them. Whereas somebody else, you look at them and you think they're really muscling those punches in. But yeah, you look at Golovkin and just the kind of, he's got that sort of vaguely sort of cherubic choir boy kind of look to him anyway. But he's an absolute killer.
There's that famous photo after he stops Gregor's Proska, where he's in the corner and he's just covered in blood. He's got the white shorts on and he's covered in blood. He's all over him. It's not his blood, obviously. And then there's the famous kind of meme where it's like you have Golovkin outside the ring, just looking like, as you said, choir boy in his nice chinos and his beige polo top.
Yeah.
And you see him in the ring.